Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Black Lawyers Podcast. Today, I have the honor of interviewing again Justin Reese from Bravo Southern Charm. He's an attorney in New Orleans, amongst other things, and he graced our presence our first season of the podcast, talking about just his journey becoming an attorney and some hot topics in the first season. So we are welcoming him back for a second season to talk about all the craziness that has been happening. Literally, I want to say in the last 2 or 3 weeks, the stories that we're going to talk about today, it's just been back to back to back to back. So no further ado, we're going to start off with Will Smith. Will Smith, as you know, has been in the news for what people thought maybe was a stunt originally, which was an on-stage slap of Chris Rock, one of the presenters at the 94th Oscars. But it ended up being a real slap. And obviously, he's apologized. You have a lot of people on both sides of the fence in terms of, was that even if he was going to slap him, was that the right thing to do? And then, now that he's apologized, what's next for the Oscar winner. So first, I'm sure you've had this conversation 100 times probably already. A lot of times people are like, that's assault, that's battery. You should know, you're a lawyer. I said, I didn't say it wasn't assault and battery. I didn't
Right.
say, I don't think anybody's going to say that it's not assault and battery. And then I think somebody else came at me in comments and said, that's protected speech. He's a comedian. He can say jokes like it's First Amendment. I said, again, I don't think anybody's debating that. The debate
Right.
is, should A, the joke have been said in the first place, and then B, should Will Smith had slapped him. So let's start off with, what are your thoughts on him telling the joke in the first place? Because it was scripted, whether he wrote it or not, it doesn't matter. He said it. What are your thoughts on him moving forward with the joke in the first place?
Well, my first impressions of the joke was I didn't think it was that terrible of a joke. Now, it's come to light that, Jada Pinkett Smith has alopecia, which I know a few women with alopecia, and for a woman in her hair, that's very protected. Like that's for a lot of women, that's kind of what gives some women their identity, is the things they're able to do with their hair, their hairstyles. It's a reflection of their personality, who they are. And sometimes when they're dealing with a medical condition like alopecia, it takes away that identity. And so I understand it at one sense, but for me, I've seen other women, I don't know them personally, via social media, who have alopecia, and they empower whatever it is that they're going through with it. Like they're rocking the bald head. It's kind of like the oh my God, I'm drawing a blank on her name. Kanye West used to date her.
Amber Rose.
Mm-hmm. Amber Rose, thank you. Sorry, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Amber Rose, I mean, she rocked a bald head and did it like so sexy and amazing. And now you see other women following suit doing the same thing. And even to a certain extent, you now see Jada Pinkett, who's rocking the short haircut, due to alopecia. And I think she's actually killing it. To me, Jada Pinkett has always been a very strong woman. She's always played a lot of strong characters. So kind of, I say all that to say this, he makes that joke, and I'm like, G.I. Jane 2, she could totally do that, because to me, she's a badass woman from the outside looking in. And so my first impression of the joke, I didn't think it was that bad of a joke, because I think he's taking it's a joke, but also using her characteristics. Like, you don't mess with Jada Pinkett. Like, she's played some hardcore gangster roles, like when she was in Set It Off and she was in The Matrix, where she's a badass,
Right.
And now here it is, she could be G.I. Jane 2 in the military, or maybe a drill instructor teaching other Navy SEALs and all this other stuff how to be a Navy SEAL, which is, from what I understand, is like the hardest training of any military service or any part of the military you could be in. It's probably like, if not the hardest, if not one of the hardest, the absolute hardest one to complete. And so I didn't really see the true offensiveness in it when I think about all of those things. So that was the first part. And then
Your
also too, that was my first reaction. I was like, I mean, she's a badass. I can see her doing it, you know?
Right, right.
And then, you know, when you kind of see Will was laughing at it, and it didn't seem like it was one of those nervous laughs. It was kind of like, yeah, my
Like a
wife's a
ha-ha,
badass.
like I'm laughing along with the audience type of laugh.
Exactly,
Right, right,
exactly, exactly. And I mean, it wasn't one of those where he was like knee slapping laughing. No, I get that
right,
because that wasn't even a knee slap joke at the end
right.
of the day either. Though I thought it was a joke, just a nice gesture, you know. But
But
whatever
the minute
happened, him
he
looking
looked and saw that she didn't take the joke
exactly,
well, that's when
yeah,
obviously it went left, which goes to the second part of my question. You know, some people are on the fence of should he have, you know, there are ways to correct someone publicly, which that's my stance. So he should have been publicly corrected if he felt like his wife was offended, even if he didn't slap him. I definitely think if it was, you know, some sort of public humiliation or a public bad joke, that the correction should have been public. Now, should have been a slap. I'm still on the fence about that. Why I'm on the fence about that? Because when you're in the moment and you're angry, you don't know what you're going to do when you're angry. It's easy for us to sit back and say, well, we know the law, we know the rules, and we know not to put our hands on people. But I think we've all had our moments where maybe we've done something that we're not supposed to do. And I think that's what I'm struggling with. I'm struggling to
yeah.
say, maybe he shouldn't have slapped him, but it's like, but if you know, I don't, you know, I'm not Will Smith or
Well,
I'm not married, so I don't know how I would have reacted at that moment. So
well, I think when you look at everything in its totality, and I've been kind of following, you know, Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith, you know, for the past, let's call it 18 months or so, right?
mm-hmm.
When you go all the way back into the whole situation that Jada had with August Alsina,
Right, the
and that
entanglement.
whole situation. So,
Right,
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 the hashtag entanglement, and
right.
so their marriage has been the topic of conversation now, and really more intensely for the past, call it 18 to 24 months, right? What it is
Mm-hmm.
that they do and what they don't do.
Right.
And from the outside looking in, I have no idea what Will Smith does or does not do. No clue, right? There's all the speculation of the type of marriage that they have, the things that they do, so forth and so on. But from the outside looking in, it's been Jada who's kind of been the focal point of that relationship. And from the outside looking in, it makes it seem like Will Smith may be like the lesser man or the weaker and getting kind of essentially getting manhandled, you know, or outpositioned by his wife in the relationship. And he's now being the brunt of a lot of the jokes or the focal point because it's like, dude, how you gonna let this dude do this to your wife in your house?
Right.
And people saying all these things, and no matter what you do in your profession, no matter how strong you are, you're still human at the end of the day. And I think it got to a point to where, and look, this is 100% theory. This is
Right.
100% me just kind of taking some pieces and trying to put together a puzzle and create a picture.
Right.
When you dealt with that much pressure, at some point you're gonna potentially explode and
You're gonna
implode.
snap.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think the what Chris Rock did, that I think it was truly egregious in what he said. Because trust me, I was just looking at a joke the other day Martin Lawrence did years ago when he was the host of on HBO Def Comedy Jam,
Mm-hmm.
and he was talking about having sex with another guy's now
You're
girlfriend.
just saying it. They go. Comedians go
Like,
there. They
and
go there.
Martin Lawrence went in, and even the guy had to laugh at that. And they were talking about because the guy, I forgot, this was like the '90s. Like the guy was the host of MTV with Ed Lover, and he was dating MC Light at the time, and he got MC Light's name tattooed on his chest. And Martin Lawrence talked about how he had sex with her before they got, and like everybody's going absolutely berserk and going nuts, right? It wasn't that kind of joke. And I think what happened, the pot just boiled over with Will, with all of
Right.
the jokes that he's been having with his relationship, his marriage, and now with his wife. Chris Rock, unfortunate, was like that last little pound of
Straw
pressure,
that broke the camel's back.
that was that last bit of pound of pressure that he could no longer take, and he caught the brunt of it. Now,
Right.
at the same time, I do have issue with Will for multiple reasons. One, if you really wanted to handle that situation, like you could have waited till after the show and addressed that man backstage, and you could have done whatever you wanted to
Or
say
he
to
could
him.
have just kept it at what he did. He kind of yelled from his seat when he sat down. He could have
He
just
could have.
did that. I
He
don't
could
even
have.
think anybody would have cared as much if he had just. I mean, they maybe would have
Yeah.
reported on like, oh, we noticed Will Smith, you know, didn't like Chris Rock's commentary. He yelled at him from his seat. I don't think it would even, I mean, it
Correct.
maybe would have been mentioned, but it wouldn't have been this whole big thing. So yeah, it's hard to
There's,
say, but I
there,
think
yeah.
to your point, I think it was a buildup. He was an easy target because
Yep.
I always give people like, don't give this hypothetical. I'm gonna give you this hypothetical. Denzel Washington was always also nominated for the same uh, nomination. It was the same category,
Yep.
right? If his
Yep.
wife had been suffering from alopecia, or let's say she had been, let's just say whatever was happening, she decided to go bald, whether it be a condition or not. Do you think that Chris Rock would have still said that joke with Denzel sitting there about his wife? My answer is I don't think so.
I don't
I don't
think
think so.
so. I
I
don't
don't
think
think
so.
so. I don't think so. Because people are like, well, he should know if he's sitting in the front seat with a woman with a bald head that may be a joke. I'm like, I can guarantee you, if that was Denzel's wife, whether it be for medical reasons or other reasons, sitting up there with a bald head, Chris Rock more anyone would dare. Why? Because there's a certain boundary and a certain level of respect Denzel has, where Will does not have that by his peers, to your point, because of the very public part of his relationship where he's just already been an easy target. And that's what I was trying, in some of the
Yeah.
comments I was trying to explain to people. I'm like, Chris Rock shouldn't do it to anyone, but Will made himself an easy target. And unfortunately, Chris Rock, I think again said the joke because, like you said, the joke wasn't too terrible. A and B, I think he just thought he could. I think he just thought he could get away with it. He just thought he could get away with it. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. But at the same time, I mean, I was very disappointed in how Will handled it because I feel like Will wouldn't have also done what he did had it been somebody else telling the joke either. You know,
yeah, perhaps
I
not.
I highly doubt he would have went up and slapped The Rock. I highly he would have went up and slapped Terry Crews. I'm being serious. I'm being serious. I thought he saw an easy target. Will Smith is a man who's probably 6'2",
Hey,
maybe
soft. Yeah,
210,
he's pretty
215
fat.
pounds.
Yeah, yeah.
He's not a small man. And Chris
No, he's not.
Rock, while Chris Rock is not a tiny man, Chris Rock, he's a smaller man than Will Smith. And
He
Will
is.
Smith, I think, also saw him as an easy target and also took that opportunity to make an example and maybe show the world that he's not this easy target and
Right,
this
right.
pushover.
That's a good
But
point.
I highly believe that Will Smith would have, he would have not slapped The Rock. He would have not slapped Terry Crews. I can promise you he wouldn't have done that. Nor do I think he may have slapped even a host like Ricky Gervais.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, these
I
are
don't.
all good points. So I think, like you said, maybe equally, he felt like he could get away with the joke with Will, and Will knew, oh, well, if I do this to Chris Rock, I can do this to Chris Rock. Like I know him outside the industry. I can go and slap the what out of him. What is he gonna do?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
So
it was also the disrespect of it too. Like I'll tell people all day, any day, I'd rather get punched in the face and knocked out than slapped. Because to me, that's the ultimate sign of
interesting.
disrespect.
Explain that.
Absolutely.
Explain, because I think he purposely did a slap because he didn't really want to hurt him. You know what I'm
He
saying?
didn't want to hurt him, but
Mhm.
if you think about it, when you slap somebody, open hand slap, that is
Mhm.
to me is the ultimate sign of disrespect, of like belittling somebody. You are literally treating them like the B word, like just
Um,
just I'm a
do you think
slap.
you equate it to like if someone spit on someone, like is that type of that
It's
same
that
level
to
of
me,
disrespect?
it's that level of disrespect because to me you're slapping, you're treating me less than a man. Like you're literally slapping
You're
me
like
around
you
as if
look,
I'm
you can't even punch me, man.
right. Like no, literally you're slapping me around as if I'm like an animal or an object or something like that. Like you're not even literally treating me as a man. And I think
Interesting.
I think it goes back to, you think of like the ultimate signs of disrespect. And I'm trying to remember, Shannon Sharp actually kind of said this in one of his interviews most recently, talking about this. You're talking about the ultimate level of disrespect. That's one, calling another person, calling a black person the N word. When you think about how black people were treated less than, being slapped around and stuff like that. Like to me, being slapped is like the ultimate sign of disrespect. And I even know it to myself where if I want to disrespect you, I'm not gonna punch you. I'm just gonna slap you. That is the ultimate sign of, to me, the ultimate sign of disrespect.
What? That is, I think you're the first person that I've heard break it down that way in terms of what happened versus like what he could have done, like punch, slap, whatever. In
Yeah,
terms of like the sign of disrespect, I never thought of it that way. And to that point about disrespect, and this is where I would land before we turn to what's legally facing Will
sure.
next. Like you said, maybe not. He didn't know about the alopecia, but you did a whole documentary about Black women and hair. So you already know Black women are sensitive about their hair, even if you don't know about the medical condition, right? Chris Rock did a whole documentary on hair and Black women. So it's like, okay, so you already know whether the person has a medical condition or not. They're probably not going to like you talking about their hair. And then on top of that, it's a Black woman in her hair. It's like, you knew that joke was going to get some sort of reaction, even if you take out the medical condition. And then you set
Mm-hmm.
that aside and you also look on the night that this is. This was essentially the biggest night of his career, right? He's 50 years old. He's waited 50 years to get an Oscar, right? They snubbed him for Ali. They snubbed him for Pursuit of Happiness, which I definitely think he should have got it for Pursuit of Happiness.
Right.
So
I thought he was even really good in I Am Legend. The fact that he had to do that movie by himself.
That's true. To carry a
that's
whole
tough.
movie by yourself is insane. Exactly. You think about the level of acting he had to do to carry a whole movie by himself. So to that point, and to the point of what you were saying about disrespect, even if we set aside he shouldn't have slapped him, should have slapped him, should have not slapped him, my point to people is let's also focus on the fact that maybe Chris Rock should have took a beat and said, you know what, I could do this joke, but this is the biggest night of his career. Let me not make fun of his wife right in front of him on the biggest night of his career. It was already about Black excellence. We had the first all Black producing team, Will Packer Productions and Shayla Cowan. We had them. We had majority Black presenters. The majority of the hosts, 2 out of 3 hosts were Black. So there was such Black excellence there. So part of me is like, even if you want to say the joke wasn't that bad and all that, my mom always said there's a time and place for everything.
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
not the time and place for that joke. You want to tell the joke maybe in the backyard or somewhere else. He still may have cursed you out or something like that, even in another context. But don't use the biggest night of someone's career to make fun of it, because the wife is not being nominated. It's Will being nominated. Because I even think if he had maybe focused the jokes more on Will, I think Will would have taken it a little bit more versus the minute he felt like his wife was humiliated. Like you said, it just broke the camel's back. With that being said, turning to the law, because this is why everyone's listening. Why are we, in terms of like what's next? A lot of people have said, I don't understand why he wasn't arrested. Well, at the time, Chris Rock has already said, and Will Packer has, the producer of the show, has confirmed that Chris Rock was adamant. Chris Rock was adamant about no arrests. He didn't want him arrested. He wanted the show to go on. I think he didn't want to make it even worse, or make it like a worse scene, right? So there's that. And then some people are saying, well, I think Chris Rock should still sue. What are your thoughts about Will not being arrested? And should Chris Rock sue just to, for the principle? I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, let's first talk about the criminal standpoint, the actual assault and battery portion. What a lot of people don't realize, every state is different too. So, they're in California, and I don't know what the California law is on that, but a lot of states, in order for you to bring an action, the person has to press charges, right? In order for an action to take place. In Louisiana, if that was to take place and a police officer was present and witnessed that, he can actually arrest Will Smith on the spot, even though Chris Rock doesn't want to press charges, because in Louisiana, the state brings charges on behalf of the people, not the person. And I can tell you, as a former prosecutor myself, I've had cases where friends have gotten into it. And, I remember there's one case in particular, 2 friends got into it. They were fighting, best friends. One of them pulls a gun on the other one, right? It was a very serious situation. Nothing fatal happened. It calmed down after that. They kind of came to their senses, but later. But nothing fatal happened. Well, the police would call, the person who pulled the gun got arrested for aggravated assault, so forth and so on. Well, as the prosecution's taking place, the friend was like, I don't want to press charges against my friend. I don't want to pursue it. Well, guess what? In the state of Louisiana, we don't bring charges on behalf of a person, the victim. We bring charges on behalf of the state and the people. So, you know, at that point, once the process is started, and we prosecuted that young man without his friend. And so the process still went through. Now, ultimately, because the friend decided not to cooperate and come to trial and testify, you know, that clearly weakened our case, but we still wound up pleading the young man to something lesser. So in like I said, I can't speak necessarily for California, but I can tell you in Louisiana, if that was witnessed by a police officer, that police officer is enough to that, and the action in itself is enough to make the arrest, do the booking, and complete the start the process for charges and then legal proceedings. Now,
but to your point, the prosecutor would still have to accept it, because I feel like, and I mean, this is not the same exact thing, but I think of a California case with an award show, Rihanna and Chris Brown. Rihanna didn't really want to cooperate after a while, but it didn't matter. At that point, the prosecutor was like, nope, we're still bringing it. So my thing is, even if Will has not been arrested, a prosecutor on their own, I mean, because I mean, this was done on live television. It wasn't like a he said, she said situation. I think, again, if they wanted to really bring it, I think that they could, even though he
could, yeah,
arrested. So
no, absolutely, that's very much a possibility. Like I said, I don't know what California law is with regards to that from a criminal standpoint, but I know in Louisiana, the DA definitely could accept charges even without the victim, you know, being there and participating. Now, you know, that remains to be seen. Who knows? They may do it delayed. And look, with assault and battery, they have a statute of limitations. They could probably wait till like it might be like 2 or 3 years to bring that case. You know, so it's up to you know, it's up to them if they want to do something now. And they got plenty of time to figure that out as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I think they're also going to see what the academy is doing, because as I said, outside of the criminal, there's the civil side. You know, the academy has its own set of rules, and then obviously Chris Rock obviously has an opportunity to sue civilly if he wanted to. As it relates to the rules, you know, the academy has, you know, a wide variety of things they can do. They can just say you are no longer able to attend the event, you know, a permanent ban, or, you know, some sort of short-term suspension. I know permanent bans like Weinstein, I think Cosby, they are no longer able to actually attend the awards. So that's an actual ban from the award show. And then there is obviously taking the Oscar away, which do you think? I don't think they're gonna take his Oscar away. Part of me just doesn't think they're gonna go that far. Just because I feel like even with Weinstein or whatever, him not being able to attend the award ceremony, he still has his Oscar. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, gotta be fair here. It's like, if you want to say he can never come back to the award show, or there's a period of time where he can't attend the award show, fine. Because that, you know, as we say, setting precedent. If you look at some other cases where people have done wrongdoings, this is how, but you haven't taken people's Oscars away. So I feel like if they Will as the first time example of this, I'm gonna be honest, I don't think it's gonna go over well.
I hope it's not as egregious, but I think, well, like I said, I think that was a better way to handle the situation than what Will did. I mean, he could have waited till afterwards, could have said something to him after the show, handled it behind stage.
I think he should have said something publicly, but I don't think he should have stopped. I think once his wife humiliated, he could have did what he did when he sat down. He could have just said, hey, don't talk about my wife. Even if you didn't want to curse, you could be like, listen, hands off my wife, you know, because you got to remember, up to this point, he's been demasculated. He doesn't stand up for her. She's more so I think because he was already feeling that way, he was going to have to say something. Even if he didn't do it.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
He was going to have to at least say something. I don't think he was just going to sit there and have her like pissed off the rest of the night with a sour face, knowing when he got home, he was going to have to deal with the fact that he didn't even address it. So I'm still on the fact that it should have been publicly addressed. I just, like you said, the slap thing is just too far. You just can't put your hands on people. People just have to.
You can't. And I hope it's egregious enough to strip him of his Oscar. Maybe I can understand, a suspension, a
sure.
year, two or three award shows, like
Sure.
you're not going to be eligible. Kind of like how college football programs mess up and they can't go to the playoffs for like 2 or 3 years, something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think his actions were nearly egregious enough as like a Harvey Weinstein or something like that
These
to
people
deserve
still
a ban.
have their Oscars.
Sure.
So if we're gonna do this, we need to just across the board treat everybody
across the board,
same.
100%. I don't think he should be stripped of his Oscar by any stretch.
What do you think about Chris Rock suing? Do you think Chris Rock should sue, or do you think he should just leave it alone?
Well, the question becomes, as attorneys, you got to figure out now even though he got slapped, what's the extent of his damages though? Because one thing is it's like, look, let's talk about civil damages. Okay. I mean, did he suffer?
If you're Chris Rock's lawyer, what would you write if you're writing damages down in notes at a consultation? What are his damages?
That's what I'm saying. Like, you got to ask yourself, what are your damages? Did you have to go to the hospital? Did he break your jaw? You missing any teeth? Did this affect your work? Are you going to miss time from work? Because from what I've been reading, the ticket sales for his comedy shows have went through the roof.
So if anything, I think this is self-discouraging.
And not just sellouts, like even the prices have gone up tremendously. So it's almost like, in a sense, the slap kind of helped him, So it's like, I don't know, how do you?
Well, okay, what about emotional damages?
I mean, there's definitely emotional distress, but the emotional distress, that's always a very hard damage to quantify, and that's a very hard. And even with emotional distress, just by itself, it's not always the biggest damage, because he's already started his tour. So did that prevent him from still earning, from making money and having a future earning capacity, right? He just had a show the other night, was it in Boston? And I guess people turned out to see if he was going to make comments about what happened. He's like, yeah, I'm still processing.
They're still processing it. He didn't even want to touch it.
And then went on through the rest of his routine.
Right.
So the question becomes, it's like, while yes, I'm, the attorney, the only thing you could do is if you try to do something real slick, but you got to be careful how you do it. And I wouldn't advise it at all, is that you could hold it's not too late for me to call the police and have you arrested. But then again, now you're talking about extortion. That's a bar issue because you can't threaten prosecution for your civil case either. So, you kind of run it into, I wouldn't advise taking that road by any stretch, because now you're getting to yourself legally and in trouble with the bar if you try to do something like that.
Okay.
But I don't know if I truly see, even with their stature, with their earning capacity, I really don't know if the damages are truly there for you to file a lawsuit on that one.
All the time. I'm gonna say, listen, people file lawsuits all the time. That doesn't mean that they're gonna go through. They could be dismissed.
Correct.
They could be, maybe you get a judgment, but there's really nothing to collect. I mean, you have to decide, like, in the long term, is this worth it? And a lot of times people don't want to hear that. Sometimes they're in their emotions and they feel like, they're trying to, sometimes principle trying to prove a point. So with that being said, that's where I think we're on one accord. I don't really think this will be a civil suit. If there's going to be arrest, I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. I think they're monitoring what the board is going to do in terms of their final punishment, which we won't hear back. It'll be a couple of weeks. I think he initially met with them on Zoom to apologize, but they're still meeting to decide. I think we're on one accord that I don't think that his Oscar is going to be taken. So, you know what? We shall see. Obviously, the Black Lawyers Podcast will continue to follow this story. And so we just wanted to bring some legal perspectives to the issue, because I know a lot of times people are, on Twitter and on the Googler and on Instagram and everywhere else, with and even Clubhouse. Clubhouse was just crazy. There were so many rooms about this.
I'm sure there was. I should have hopped in some of those rooms, and I did not do that.
Really emotional, and so anyway, it was definitely a topic of discussion. Moving on to another person that tends to wear his emotions on his sleeve. Keep it up with Kanye. Kanye West. And I know you had mentioned, like, I almost lost track of what was happening with Kanye. So for our audience, I'm just going to walk you through just some of the things that literally have all happened in the last 3 weeks. In fact, the news kind of got quiet on Kanye just because of the Will Smith stuff. It almost like gave the Kanye a break, because it was almost a news story every other day about Kanye West. So for our audience that's listening, it started off with a simple custody issue. He felt that Kanye couldn't go to, I believe it's Chicago's birthday party. He didn't have the address. Kim claims she thought they were having two separate parties. Allegedly it was just a misunderstanding. He finally gets to the party, but of course he goes on Instagram because that's his new favorite place to go to get help.
Yeah.
I don't know why,
Yeah.
but he didn't embrace social media before at all. But now it's like, if he has a problem, he goes straight to the people. He goes, I don't have the address to the party. Can someone tell Kim to give me the address? Really putting his custody issues on Front Street. And so, it obviously started off with that. And I had made the comment, if this continues to happen, maybe they do need, you can ask for some sort of temporary custody order while divorce is pending. And maybe it does need to be written down so both parties are held accountable to whatever is in that order. So it started off with that. Then it pivoted to North, their oldest child, wearing makeup and heels on TikTok, and being in some videos without Kim on TikTok. And so there was a legal issue there because it was a temporary ban on the account because of that. Then it pivoted to cyberbullying. He felt like, well, actually before the cyberbullying, it pivoted to so many issues. I'm trying to keep track. Then it pivoted to their actual divorce proceeding, where Kim said, well, the prenup talks about our assets. Let's just be legally single, declared single. So if we wanted to be married, if we wanted to just be unmarried in the eyes of the law, we could take that status until we, figure out the custody issues and things like that. And so there was that. He was protesting her getting her single status. And then it pivoted finally to the cyber bullying, the harassment of, Kim Kardashian's boyfriend, Pete Davidson. I think D.L. Hughley tried to stand up and say something. Trevor Noah finally said something on his show, because he is the host of this year's Grammys. The Grammys decided, you are not allowed, you're nominated, you can come, but we don't want you to perform because based on your online behavior, we don't know what you're going to do. And then Instagram, similarly to the Grammys, was like, we're going to put you in a timeout for 24 hours.
Put them in
they put them in, what do you call it, Instagram jail? I didn't know about this jail. People were telling me Facebook jail, Instagram jail. I guess because I've never done anything to go in jail.
Yeah, they shut you down for 24 hours.
They shut you down for 24 hours. So as you can see, so many things have happened with Kanye. Like I said, I think I just named 5 different legal issues, or at least 4 different legal issues in such a short period of time. So I guess my first question to you is, we'll group some of these things together. I don't know if you've done any family law, anybody with family law. What are your thoughts on when you have, even if they're not high profile, in this case, really high profile parents? I mean, he's tried to move across the street, so, they could be right there. So some people think that's weird. What do you think moving forward they should do around the custody issues? Because he's not liking how his children are being portrayed. He feels like he's not even seeing them. I think there was even a trip that Kim put allegedly all the kids on the plane except for North. And I'm not saying North is his favorite, but let's be honest, North is his favorite. So like little things, how people do little digs, little digs like, oh, kids are on the plane, but North's not coming. Like little things like that. Do you think it's time at this point for them to maybe get a temporary custody order?
I could tell you everything that's happening between these two and this whole situation is probably the main reason why I do not practice family law, because this stuff literally happens. You'd be surprised more often than you think, maybe not to this exact level because of the amount of monetary resources that Kanye and Kim have, but there are very similar circumstances and situations that happen with families all the time. and it is emotionally draining, and it is not something that I choose or care to deal with. However, in this particular situation, what is happening, I have seen the very ugly side of domestic situations. More recently, there was one that happened in my home city of New Orleans where there was a child exchange at the local Costco where the biological father wound up getting killed by the child's mother's boyfriend. And there definitely needs to be safeguards. There definitely needs to be like court order measures put in place so that way there's just an understanding for people. Now, those are very extreme cases, you know what I'm saying? But I can tell you, depending on the type of person that is receiving the type of, the things that Kanye has been putting out there, and just constantly, the cyberbullying, the things that he's saying about Pete Davidson, he's making records, and songs about him.
Chopping his head off in the music video.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna lie. The song did go kind of hard.
The song was hard, right?
The one with him in the game.
Artistic expression.
His artistic expression with the game. I'm not gonna lie. I was kind of rocking with it. I was, but taking the step back and being the receiving end of it at Pete Davidson, it's like, wow, like this dude literally took time to go make a record about me and his children's mother with another very famous artist. That's a lot to process and to deal with. It's like, what do you say to that? Like, how do you come back at that, And it's those kind of things that have been happening over and over that could potentially boil over. And that one instance that I just told you about at Costco, like, that's a very real situation. I've read other stories that have similar situations have dealt with, and I'm not wishing any ill will or harm upon anybody in this group or this party or anybody outside of this group or this party who are dealing with a similar situation. But I'm just saying that can be the reality when behaviors like this constantly keep going and going and going and going. We talked about Will Smith getting to his boiling point into where he talked.
Right. I was gonna say, you just talked, you don't know. And Kanye already is on medication and dealing with real mental health issues.
Exactly.
Like, even if he was not married and he didn't have any children, he is, he actually is diagnosed, right? He's on medication. So you're already dealing with someone that's that fragile. And then you throw in the fact that he didn't really want the divorce. He really wants to, be with his kids all the time. And here's this new guy. And here's the thing, to your point, Pete Davidson receiving it. Yeah, Pete Davidson received it for a while, but he finally said something. And he said, "I'm in bed with your wife." Because I think he asked, "Where's Kim?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm in bed with," he really took a shot at him.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was like, okay, enough is enough. You didn't say stuff for 6 months now. Now I'm gonna hit you with that. And of course, that, I'm sure that just killed Kanye.
Absolutely.
That text message. So
Absolutely.
Pete has his breaking point. Kanye has his breaking point. Like you said, you don't know how in real life, when parties are, it's one thing to do something over the phone or on the internet. But like you said, when people see each other in person, you don't know. You don't know how far it's gonna go. You don't know how far it's gonna go.
You don't know. And I can tell you, using that more local example that happened in New Orleans, I'm pretty sure when that father went to go do that exchange, he did not know or have any clue that his life was gonna end that day, doing that exchange with his son. And the sad part is, I still don't know what came of that, but needless to say, there was a child that witnessed their biological father dying. And then there's a person who don't know the dynamics of the relationship between that man and the child's mother, if it was a good relationship, if the little boy liked him, and he was like a good influence on him. Mm-hmm. Now he's seeing potentially somebody else going to jail, and how that's going to affect his relationship with his mother moving forward when you think about the future. There's a lot that happens. So in the Kim and Kanye situation, 100% there needs to be something put in place immediately. There should even be, with Kanye's antics, I would not be surprised if they even wanted to have some kind of restraining order for all the things that he's doing, because they clearly got enough evidence to get a temporary restraining order.
He made it easy. He put all his business on the internet. And I think somebody said this poor lawyer, that because he's changed lawyers several times, because he's probably not listening to them. I think they're like, listen, let's Let's scale back. We're all about free speech, but let's scale back how much you're putting online, because the more you put online, this people don't understand. We're
Yeah.
in a new age. Custody, any legal case, it doesn't have to be family law. What you put online can be used against you. It's just like sending an email or leaving a
Yeah.
voicemail. It's the same. People collect that. Social media evidence has exploded in all types
Let me
types
let me let me let me
types
tell
of
you let me tell you
cases.
something. People hide behind, and what they truly don't understand, the freedoms that we truly have. Just because you have the freedom to do something, that doesn't mean that it's also free of consequence. You can say a lot of things. You can truly say that you are the most racist, discriminatory, whatever person, but guess what? That's going to affect you getting employment. That's going to affect your relationships with other people. But yes, you do have that freedom of speech. And sometimes I say with certain freedoms, we have freedom at the same time.
Somebody say play stupid games, get stupid prizes.
Yeah,
Somebody told me that.
exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, no, for sure. And to the point, I mean, the last point about Kanye, some people outside of, the custody issues he's having and the cyberbullying, obviously Instagram and the Grammys has to have, responded the way they felt like they needed to respond to give him some sort of consequence. We shall see if he actually attends the Grammy, because at this point, I mean, yeah, you dominated, you don't have to come. And now that, he's not even being asked to perform, he may not want to come. Someone said that
Sure.
they're rumoring that he may do a competing concert with some other artists that haven't been nominated that same night. I don't know if that's going to happen. But to your point about free speech, and I just want to emphasize this to people, because people are like, that's not right. He should be able to say what he wants. Like you said, yeah, you can, at some level you can say, but there's some speech that isn't protected. If it gets in
Mm-hmm.
the realm of bullying and harassment, that's like a federal crime. Like you can't, yeah, you can say what you want to say, but there's still some parameters around it. And people have to understand Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, all these, they're owned by private companies. If they don't want you doing certain things, they're private. They can say no.
Mm-hmm.
We don't think this is acceptable. So, some people just feel like, he's being overly censored, and, he's just using these platforms to seek help and he shouldn't be censored. Yeah, maybe some of the things he's saying isn't, aren't totally off, the record, in terms of being
Mm-hmm.
terrible. Like I would want my little girl wearing makeup and heels and, being like seemingly sexualized in video where anybody can download it. Even if I wasn't famous, I probably would want that. So it's not like he's completely off the mark with some of the things
Oh
that he's
no,
saying, but
I will give Kanye a lot of credit when it comes
mm,
to a lot of his actual core values with his children and things he believes in how to raise his children. I actually agree with a lot of them. I really do.
mm,
It's
mhm.
just the way that he's handling this
It's
entire
the way they're
situation,
handling.
but I actually agree with the values that a lot of the values that he has to his core, to
Mm.
his actual core. I do believe it when it comes to family and things like that. But the way that he's trying to go about, making them happen is completely out of the box.
It's out of the box, and I think that
And it overshadows his core values and a lot of those beautiful things that he wants to have for his family and his children. For even to have some, even though they're very wealthy and in the limelight, but I do think there's a part of him that wants that his children have some semblance of normalcy
normalcy.
and just being like what it is to not to know what it's like to go to the grocery store and know how much a gallon of milk costs.
Right,
Things
right.
like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And I think, I don't know if you saw any of his documentary on Netflix. I think it's shown that side of him, that really intelligent, just creative genius, like people fall in love with that with Kanye. But the problem is, like you said, it gets overshadowed when he mixes it in with narcissism, when he mixes it in with his presentation. And so, more than anything, I know he has a new lawyer now. I think he just needs a new PR team, a new media team. Like, listen, if you want to use your Instagram and your Twitter to put out, you're feeling a certain
Yeah.
way, we're going to talk about it before you post it, because overall, we're trying to get your image to go in a different direction. We also don't want you to continue to hurt a potential custody case. You don't want to lose your kids or only be able to visit your kids, because now Kim's legal team, which I'm not saying she's going to do this, but like you said, she could. If she wanted to, she presents you as completely unstable, a danger to yourself, therefore you're a danger to your children. If she wants to present that, I'm not saying she'll be completely successful, but she can present that at this point. And so
Mm-hmm.
I would hate that for him. And so anyway, like I said, Kim doesn't strike me as that type of person that would go that far, but you also just don't know. Everybody has their breaking point. You never know. There's so much you may do to her publicly that she says enough is enough. So
Sure.
for now, he's quiet. I think between Will Smith and the Ukraine war and maybe COVID. I mean, COVID's kind of quiet down in the news. Those things seem to be dominating the news. So he's out of the news cycle, but the Grammys is in a couple of days. So of
Mm-hmm.
course he'll be back in the news if he plans to attend or if anything
Yeah.
happens with that. So we will continue to keep up with Kanye and monitor him closely as things continue to progress with his divorce from Kim Kardashian. Last but not least, I just wanted to talk about Ketanji Brown Jackson and her Supreme Court nomination. It's funny. It's like, so maybe maybe two clubhouses at the most talking about it. Obviously, I think Twitter and maybe Instagram with the photos of her family, that kind of went viral. But I don't really hear a lot of people, at least in the Black legal community, really talk about. I think we've kind of all experienced this when we go in the room, we're the only one, or maybe we're the first at something, and the pressures that you have to face when doing that. As a Black attorney, being Black, we're less than 5% of the legal profession. So it's like, even if she wasn't ever going to do the Supreme Court, what she faced there is what she probably faced at Harvard, probably faced, being a judge in other places, being a lawyer, so at some level, some people said, wow, she just had so much grace. I'm like, because she already know what it is. Like
She's already had to do all of this stuff. This is not new.
This is not new. And it just, but I will say, and I'll break them up in three categories, just the things that stood out to me in her nomination. The first one was when they really tried to force her to talk about what she wanted, what she defined as a woman. I don't know if you remember, but that was one of the big ones. And again, she's not stupid. She knows that the rules are evolving, right, regarding transgender rights and things like that. So, because some people are like, I just don't understand. Why couldn't she just say, someone biologically born with blah, 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 that's a woman? Why couldn't she just say that? I said, because she's smart, she knows that the rules are evolving. And so she's not gonna make some definitive statement in her hearing that will probably be tried to be used against her later. So what are your thoughts on that, with her just like refusing to define it? A lot of people, I'll be honest, a lot of people had a problem with that. A lot of people had a problem.
Hold on, give me 1 second. I
Sure.
need to plug in. I'm getting ready to
plug.
lose a little juice over here.
Plug it in, no problem.
Okay. No, I thought it was incredibly open-minded, and that's what you want in a judge. You want someone who's going to be able to look at issues from so many different angles. A lot of times Supreme Court justices are going to be creating new law and the things that they're deciding on more often than, well, maybe not more often than not, but let's just say quite a bit at a time. And so you want someone who's going to have that open mind to interpret the law, look at the situation, see, does it affect any type of person's constitutional rights? You want to make sure that they're going to be able to look at every single angle, because we as a society and as a community are constantly evolving every single day. And now, when we're talking about LGBTQ communities, when we're talking about people who are who transition from one sex to the other, yes, while they might not have been biologically born, but what defines them, they're changing themselves, their features, their body, even their genitalia. Even though like a person biologically born male transitioning to a woman, yes, may not have been born with ovaries and fallopian tubes and a cervix, but it's truly changing themselves into everything that embodies a woman, with breasts, with the transition of a vagina and all these other things. That's that they're making major steps
It's
to
new
transition.
waters.
It's
It's new
yes,
waters that we have
it's
that again, maybe
it's
50 years ago,
uncharted.
they never thought to have this conversation, but now.
It's uncharted waters. And what's happening with that is, how does that affect down the line of so many different things? Like, what, again, the hot topic was the bathrooms, and now, we have a lot of trans men and women who are attending, universities these days and law schools. Like, are they staying in the men's dorm or the women's dorm, and all of these other things that are important issues, because they are people. They are part of our community. They are people who are going to contribute to society. A lot of times, these people in the past, it was so unfortunate. Like, a lot of them, unfortunately, had to result, like years ago, decades ago, to sex work, because there was no employment opportunities. But now, trans members of our communities are becoming lawyers and doctors and politicians, and are being part of a major influence, in our lives, in our community, and are, who are helping us in so many different ways, and so that part that still needs to be open for interpretation. You can't, I don't think you can put it, in a box. You can't necessarily just check a box right now with that, and I like that she kept that open, because she's brilliant enough to see that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, speaking of, like you said, wanting a judge to be open and being able to apply the rules, in this day and age, the second thing that they really got on her about was the pedophilia cases. I think they went over that 15 million times. And I'm like, like, am I missing something? These people had already pled guilty. They had already pled guilty. Was it like a thing of guilt or not? Was it like she was like, oh, they're not guilty? No, they had already pled guilty. And she literally applied the
The
sentencing
law
guidelines.
that was in place. Yes.
So
You
people are like,
can't, you
well,
can't, you
you could
can't.
have sentenced them to more time in that range. So I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. Let's just say it was 5 to 8 years, and maybe some of the cases she would give 5 instead of 8. So the argument is, well, she only gave them 5 when she could have given them
And
8. What do you think about that?
I'm gonna tell you, at that point they were 100% reaching, because she's more qualified than the overwhelming majority of Supreme Court justices that are sitting on that bench right now. Literally, when you think about everything, all the experience that she's had, from being a federal district court judge, a federal appellate court judge, a public defender, part of the sentencing commission, all of her experience, Harvard Law Review editor.
Yeah, they did a
all of
chart
the,
of all her experience, and she had
all,
the most
all,
out of
all of these
everybody.
different experiences
Right.
that she has,
Right.
and you're hanging your hat on, a difference of 2 to 3 years in sentencing, because that's all you got. That's literally all you have. That's all you have to hang your hat on. And the problem is, it was the legislators' responsibility to change those sentencing guidelines, so that way people who were convicted of crimes like that or pled guilty could get longer sentences. So you can't ask a judge to sentence somebody to 20 years when the sentencing guideline says this, because at that point now the judge is breaking the law. They're violating the law. They have to follow the law just like everybody else does. They've got to follow the same law as the lawyers, the same law as the police officers, the same law as the prosecutors, the public defenders. Whatever the law states, same thing when they tell jurors, you got to follow the law, judge got to follow the law too. And if the sentencing guideline says X, Y, and Z for this particular crime, then that's what they got to follow.
Right. And as long as she picked some years within the range, she was within her right to pick that. And they're literally hanging their whole hat on, well, she could have gone higher in the range.
That's
maybe
all they have.
She could have, but maybe she was, like you said, considering some other things. I mean, you weren't in the judge in that situation. You didn't have all the facts in that situation. And so it's amazing how the media really spun it as, she's pro pedophiles.
Of course. But that's all they can do, and that's what they're gonna do. They, depending on which media outlet, we know some are obviously more biased towards certain parties than others, and that's fine if that's the stance that they want to take. But it's not like this woman gave, somebody, where in the state of Texas, murder is like 5 to like 30 years, right? Where this person committed murder, maybe multiple murders, and then you gave them 5 years when they could have got 30. we're talking about a difference of 5 to 8 years here, and I think it's just absolutely ridiculous. But then again, sometimes these news media outlets, they're very much hypocrites in their own words. A lot of times they want to talk about how professional athletes need to shut up and dribble basketballs, but then they allow quarterbacks like Tom Brady and Drew Brees to give their political opinions on things. So, I mean, when it comes to, certain things that are said, you just take it with a grain of salt, at the end of the day.
I think she did and like you said, I think she did that. I think she did her best to maintain. I mean, she has some moments where, it was on her face, like, okay, how many times? And after a while, she said, as I have already previously responded. I mean, after a while, she kept cutting and pasting that answer. Because it just seemed like they weren't going to let it go. And I think, again, Blacks in this profession, we're talked down to. The last group of statements that kind of came out of the hearing in terms of being highlighted were when they wanted to go on the whole rant about critical race theory or whatever, and even her religion. Again, it's like, so you literally spent 5 minutes talking about what her religion. First of all, you're not even really allowed. You're not even supposed to be talking.
You're not supposed to do that, yeah.
Right. But he did that. And then you finally realize why he did it. He did it because he felt like, I believe Justice Brenner or one of the other justices had been treated unfairly, I think, for being his religion, whether it be Catholicism or what. He felt like one of the other justices, when he was going through his confirmation hearing, was treated unfairly. So he decided to use Ketanji's confirmation to talk about how another judge had been treated up. I thought that was absolutely insane, because you got to the end of his rant and you realized it wasn't even really about her religion. It was just about how he felt like somebody else got a hard time. And then the other thing that I noticed they talked about was that book that is sold out now. I think what is his name? Is it Ted Cruz?
Yeah.
Who served on the law review with her. He was at Harvard with her at the same time. I think he's jealous that she's being nominated. I'll be honest. I think there was some jealousy. He started off really nice, but you could tell he didn't care for her. He literally tried to use a children's book teaching children not to be racist as a tool to say, do you think babies are racist? That's what he asked her. Do you think babies are racist? I mean,
I know one of the questions as I was watching, they asked her how many times did she go to church, or they were trying to make a big point of that. And I really liked her answer, because unfortunately, a lot of times people try to use religion as their opinion or basis for creating laws. I mean, obviously abortion is now a hot topic, especially what just happened in Texas recently with the new abortion law that they just passed. And a lot of that could be centered around your religious beliefs. And, I think how often a person goes to church has no effect should not have any effect on how they decide law. We used to always say, one of the first things we learned about even before law school, there should always be a separation between church and state. And unfortunately, that does not happen much anymore, because a lot of people's religious beliefs are always these days are getting intertwined in their political and legal agendas. And that should not be the case. It shouldn't be about what your religious beliefs are, and that should not be a part of your lawmaking decision. And I thought she did a phenomenal job of answering, because she's trying to show the world, like, regardless of how many times I go to church, I'm still going to be very much open-minded. I'm still going to very much hear the law and the arguments that are presented and make a decision based on my bipartisan beliefs, and not allow my own personal beliefs to creep in. And I thought she did a phenomenal job by answering that question.
And the good news is they don't need any Republican votes to really push this through. As long as all the Democrats vote, Kamala Harris would be the tie-breaking the 51. So, and now they said they actually have one Republican now that's willing to say that she would vote yes for her. So, yeah, I mean, with all of that song and dance that they did with the hearing, I think at some level she also knew that it didn't matter, that she was going to get confirmed, that this was just something she had to just go through, because this is a process. But they don't even need all their votes. So
those senators who are opposed to her, they have to make a song and dance for their constituents because they have to at least show that they tried.
That they tried to fight back.
That they tried to fight back. So that's a dog. To me, that's a dog and pony show for their own constituents. I mean, they probably know what's inevitable, but they just got to do something to make sure that they remain in their seat when it comes time for midterms.
This is true. This is true. And something that our audience may not know, Ketanji's father is a lawyer. Her brother is a lawyer. So it's a family affair. I love that there's so much like Black excellence with their family. And on that note, I want to just end with our Black excellence moment for the week. Huge merger. I'm from DC, so I know about the City First Bank. So they're not that many. We're always talking about Black banking power and how we should have our own banks. So City First Bank in DC and then the Broadway Federal Bank in Los Angeles have decided to merge. So now they are the largest Black-owned bank in the U.S. with more than $1 billion in assets. So congratulations to them with that. And I want to see more of that in our communities, us coming together. I think, we've just kind of been in this kind of crab in the barrel mentality for so long. I love to see, even with everything that happened with the Oscars, so much Black excellence coming together to put on such a phenomenal show. I think the ratings would have been high even without the Oscar slap. But yeah, I love to see that, amongst our people. And I just want to thank you again for coming on and just giving, I say 2 cents, but to me it's worth more than 2 cents because every time I talk to you, I'm like, I didn't think about it that way. I'm like, this is why you're here. Give another perspective or hot topic.
I always enjoy coming on here and fleshing out a lot of these topics and talking about not just the legal issue, but just from a societal standpoint and, just trying to stay on top of the things that we want to do as a community. So I always appreciate it.
For sure. And so, like I said, we are here at the Black Lawyers Podcast. We are rooting for everyone Black. Take care, everyone.